and there's no separation between anything. And boundaries is, how do you find a space? For some people, it's in a very tiny physical space to still have freedom in confinement, to still have your mind and your imagination be boundless, so that you don't experience the contraction of the body as a contraction of the mind. That's one. And also a sense that you have where I stop and where you start. So it can be a pair of headphones that I put over my ears so that I can listen to my own music. It can be my own calls that I make to my own friends. It can be going and take walks by myself so that I can not constantly feel like we are 24/7 on top of each other.
Right. And I think that's such an interesting point. I mean, I feel like we're so lucky being here in Los Angeles that, you know, we can still go outside. We can walk around the neighborhood. You know, I can be in one room while my girlfriend is in another room doing her work. But how about so many of these new couples and people that are living in New York City? I mean, the city where your square footage, if you're lucky, you have just one big room. And you can't really go outside, go for these walks. You're now living together, working together, eating together, your personal time, everything is right there.
Yeah.
What do you suggest to get that kind of...
It's one person that is supposed to be your entire community, right? I'm in a very small 2-bedroom space right now because it so happens that we are doing construction upstairs. So suddenly I'm actually in a much smaller place than what I typically live in. And we have had to really negotiate this. It's kind of, you know, for example, if you're in a small space, the habit could be that while you walk in, you start talking, even though the other person is doing something. Perhaps it's interesting to imagine yourself knocking on a door and just say, can I come in for a moment, even if there's no door, just so that you understand that there's a boundary, that the other person is thinking, writing, talking, reading, doing something. And it's not just like you barge in and there's no separation and you enter into the space of the other person, etc. So that's one thing. The other thing is if you can, you just say, I need 10 minutes. Or half an hour, and you find a way to close the door. For some people, it's the bathroom, not to worry. For some people, it's the staircase, it's the hallway. It's not like it, but there is a place where you say to someone, I need to go and be by myself. And you, please don't take this as a rejection of you, or it just means I need to kind of get a sense of my own space, you know, my own body contours. And people do it the best way they can.
Right. And I know that you've been talking about relationships as a whole, what it's been like for people to start moving in with their significant other during quarantine. But you've also talked a little bit about couples that are quarantining apart from each other. I mean, in different cities, in different states, I know that a lot of people have, you know, going back and living with their parents like I am, who are, you know, a little bit older and more, you know, susceptible, maybe vulnerable.
How long has it been since you went back home, and how much have you regressed?
It's been 2 months that we've been together, and it's been a blast. We've been having a really great time.
Wonderful.
But you know, I couldn't imagine if, you know, my girlfriend's from Alabama, so you know, she wasn't home at the time, but if she was back in Alabama and couldn't come back to LA because of the flying and with her parents and with my mom, I'm just curious of what you've seen for people, what it'd be like quarantining totally apart in different cities or states.
So there's a whole range of people, right? I'm apart because my partner is an essential worker, and it's dangerous for us to be together.
Right.
You know, I have a parent who is elderly or vulnerable, or a child. We are stuck for immigration reasons. We are apart because each of us went to be with our respective families. We are apart, you know, there's a range of reasons. So look, at this moment, some people suffer from being too close and some people suffer from being too far. This is just, you know, for the people who are far, it's about how do you maintain a connection that is alive, so that there's not a sense of, you know, we sit together at night in front of the screen and we tell each other about the days that we have lived each separately. It's one of the things that has actually been really interesting is for people to take their cameras with them in the midst of the different activities that they do. So you're with me in the kitchen while I cook, you're with me on my walk when I take a walk, you're with me when I go to the store, and you are part of my life rather than I live my life and then I come and I tell you about it in this very static, stale way. Then there is really, it's very important to understand, for some people, the imagination the creativity, the way they stay in touch. The ritual, every night we light a candle at the same time, both of us. We have a song that we listen together in the morning when we wake up. We have a way where we send each other certain check-ins at certain times of the day. It's really interesting to see couples who are coming up with all kinds of ways to play together, not just to stay connected, but to stay alive in their connection. That's the main piece here.
I love that, staying alive. You also have, which I think is really important, that so many people are working virtually, right? Their entire work life is now a Zoom life, and their relationships with their bosses and their coworkers has changed dramatically. And what I admire about you, Esther, that you talk about relationships, but you also talk about how we communicate at work and in different kinds of relationships. What are you hearing from people about how they can or cannot communicate, and what advice do you have for those people who are on Zoom calls all day long and they can't kind of find their voices?
I mean, you know, I do hours of therapy online at this moment. I do supervision online. I do the podcast, and it's like my whole life is in front of this screen. I think one of the things that we talk a lot about is, what does trust look like from a distance? How do you work with remote teams and create a sense of synergy and creativity among the teams? What is it like to onboard people? You know, like somebody was saying yesterday, by this week, 30% of their workforce will never have been in the offices. 30% of the people that will join this company have never met anybody else who works at this company. How do you create a connection? And that means that you start your meetings a little differently. So we used to not do that. You know, in my own little team, we start and we basically do questions that are related to the moment. Like, what are parts of yourself that you know that you need to break up with? That's a wonderful little question. In what ways do you break patterns? Or what are the patterns that, what do you think breaks patterns? Or what have you done this week to perk yourself up? And then you have 12, 13 people who are sharing resources. And the rest of the group gets to really hear, how are you? Who are the people in your family? Has anybody had an important moment this week that we need to know that is affecting your life and therefore your work? You take 10 minutes. And then the group comes together. Then you have a team and you can say, okay, now can we move on to the project and let's talk. I think it's very important, this question that everyone is asking, and how are you?
Right.
Not just, and where are you at, and how's the project coming along, you know?
Yeah, no, it's so interesting because so much of like, of course, Inc. magazine, Forbes, they all put out articles saying where the best places are to work and how much different companies have put money and time and hiring of different types of people to create more of a community aspect and create kind of the what's the culture like. And now that whole culture has been kind of separated and people are working from at home and all through Zoom. So what you're talking about is really interesting. And you talked about a little bit how there's been like a change not only with that, but you talked about on your Instagram how a lot of anxiety has been created because people it's not only that we're seeing a lot of deaths, but we're also seeing kind of a death of what life used to be like, right? We were in this world of how we thought everything was, the predictability, the idea of we knew what tomorrow was going to look like has totally shifted and changed. And it's created anxiety about missing what used to be. How are you dealing with kind of patients and different people that are stuck on thinking like that?
Look, I think the most important thing when people live in a state of acute stress as we are now, in a state of prolonged uncertainty, in a state of what is often called ambiguous loss, which is that it's not like somebody died. It's just that the world that you knew is no longer. The plans you made are gone. The future that you imagined, you can't conceive of. You have no idea how long this thing is going to last. And it's important to translate stress and fear into identified feelings. Is it sadness? Is it worry? Is it frustration? Is it irritability? Is it helplessness, hopelessness? What is it that you are feeling? And then you realize that a lot of these feelings come up as the word grief. Grief is this sense of mourning that you have, but not always because somebody physically died, but because the world you knew, the relationships you had, the way that your work had been such a part of your identity and you've lost that job, and so many people are in that situation, that's grief. you know, and it demands mourning, but it demands a dual relationship. It's on the one hand, you have the pain, you have the sorrow, you have the loss, and then at the same time, you also begin to think about restoration and hope. And what does life look like once you actually understand this loss and understand this sadness and pain? And it's this both and relationship. You have hope is not just a feeling, it's a plan. And you have that plan once you've accepted what's happened to you.
I think one of the kind of final things I wanted to bring up with you, Esther, is that so many people like, when is this over? When will I return to normal? What's happening? And they're fighting. And you have always maintained that, don't worry, everybody fights. It's how you fight that's important. Don't throw the kitchen sink. So explain that, because I think that's good for parents, siblings, and people in intimate relationships.
Yes,
not
absolutely.
the fight, but how you fight is what's important.
And in the Couples Under Lockdown, in the podcast series, you'll see a lot of these. It's really, basically, first of all, it's very important for people to understand the difference between making a request. I really want you to take care of this now. I want you to clean this up. I'd like you to go and, you know, bring the garbage out. Versus, I've been asking you 10 times and you never do anything. I ask you. It's like, make a request versus a protest. Ask for something. Be specific. Don't start to give. And, you know, 2 years ago, you know, and then you bring in history and all the dishes pile up at the same time and you don't know anymore what you're talking about. That is a no-no. This is a very simple one. So you make your request, you make it clear, you know, and then you start to notice how much of the time are you constantly picking up on the stuff that is missing, that the other person is not doing, or that you think you're doing more of. How much are you like calculating, computing the whole time? You know, and maybe at the moment you're actually beginning to be resentful and annoyed. Why should I always be the one that ta-ta-ta-ta? You begin to think about the stuff that the other one is also always doing that you never have to think about. So that you get a sense of not being constantly in this 50-50 thing, but much more in a sense of broad fairness, broad equitability, you know, rather than, you know, same, you know, we are calculating like that. In a relationship, it's 100% on every side, not 50-50 on every side. It's actually a different thing, you know. There's just a lot of things that one can say about how, I mean, I'm going to kind of say, if you listen more to the stuff like you have done, you will see the step, you know, say to the person what you are upset about, that is the thing they do, and don't start attacking the whole person and make these characterological statements. You pig, you lazy bum, you this, you that. Who will respond nicely to that? You know, you always, you never. These categorical statements, you are done. You know, I can give you the 10 things absolutely not to do, and then there's a few that just will take this in a completely different direction.
That's so true. Several people there are saying, I do that with my kids, you know, or people can find that obviously in their relationships, in their work relationships. You can bring up out of anxiety what people are doing wrong. But I think your whole point of don't throw the kitchen sink, be specific, learn how to communicate at home, in an intimate relationship and a work relationship. I love starting the meetings. What do you want to break up with in yourself? I think that's a genius question.
You know, because at the end of this whole period, everybody will actually have learned a lot more about themselves. I can tell you that.
Absolutely.
So there's certainly parts of ourselves that we would like to break up with.
Finally, what do you want to break up with?
What do I want to break up with? I think sometimes the sense of dread that I wake up with, you know, like I forget the part that says, you know, if you have plans, it means that you actually are looking forward to life. It means that you want things that you're hopeful and that you see yourself on the other side. Sometimes I wake up and I just think, you know, what am I doing? Why am I even bothering? Because all of this could disappear any moment. And I would like to just be able to calm that fear in a better way than I sometimes am able to.
Right. Wonder. Esther Perel, thank you so much. I know how busy you are. You can follow Esther on Instagram. You can listen to her podcast. I know you're making a documentary.
I'm Patrick, by the way. I didn't even introduce myself in the beginning of this.
This is Patrick.
You know, I'm a mother of 2 sons too. I don't know your age, but I think they're close to you. And it's one of the most beautiful relationships. When it's good, it's just pure juice.
Oh, well, thank you.
Well, it's
Thank
good.
you.
So
We have a good
I know,
relationship.
I see it. I see it. Or you wouldn't be doing this thing together. So
Fresh squeeze, pure juice.
Pure juice. Thank you,
press.
Esther. It's so nice to see you. Thank
my
you for
pleasure.
sharing your
Thanks a
wisdom.
lot.
Great to
Bye-bye.
see you.
Bye-bye. There's Esther Perel, official.
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 Everyone's
I love
official
that.
except for us.
I know we have to add official. I like that. I liked everybody's comments that they found that she's super helpful in their relationships.
Yep.
Her books are incredible. Her TED Talk is extraordinary, makes you rethink a lot of things. And I love the advice she had for if you're working from home, what you can bring to those morning team meetings. I'm going to implement some of those things tomorrow morning in my team meetings.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I'm going to think about what
Watch out,
part of
everyone.
myself I want to break up with, because we're all going to be different, right? That's kind of life. We're all going to be hopefully evolving, learning, growing from this experience.
Yeah, and I think she said that, you know, different, not only our relationships, but also yourself. Everyone's going to see kind of the cracks right now. People are going to see where the light goes through and the light at the end of the tunnel. But, you know, a lot of people that are new to living with their significant other, people that are doing these relationships long distance, this is going to be a test of time. Same thing in the business world. A lot of businesses are seeing cracks, and that's not the end of the world. That you're going to see some light through those cracks, and you can know what needs to be fixed and how to get through this period and come out on the other side really a lot stronger.
I think what she also said, that something I did not grow up with, but I think is very powerful, not to be afraid of the fight, but learn how to fight well. And by that, I don't mean like this, but use your words well, know what you're actually fighting about. Don't fight about something from 5 years ago. Don't throw in the kitchen sink, you know, and I always thought it's a great opportunity. You can grow from a fight. You can deepen your connection. That's something Dan Siegel talks about. And obviously that's something that she's talking about. So I think people's marriages have been saved from Esther. People's relationships have grown from her work. She really makes people rethink everything. And she works with lots and lots of companies. And I thought your point about how company cultures at the office, and then she's working with companies, so many companies she works with. So
yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens, or how companies react to this. How do they continue to build culture, to build teamwork, to build community, yet with everyone being totally apart from each other?
Yeah,
so
and not even knowing each other, as she said.
I know. 30% of new hires will never know their teammates or the people they're working with just through Zoom. And it's going to be interesting to see. But thank you guys again. I'm Patrick Schwarzenegger.
And I'm Maria Shriver.
And we appreciate you guys watching once again.
We're home together.
We're home together still. End of May. Still together.
And tomorrow we have Jess Seinfeld on, who is doing great work with her Good Plus Foundation. She has a great Instagram following, and she does a lot of beautiful cookbooks. But tomorrow she's going to talk about her work with the Good Plus Foundation, which is doing a lot of really important work on the front lines of humanity. So I hope you'll join us for that. And we hope you have a great rest of your day. Okay. And watch Patrick's Pints.
See ya.
Okay.
Adios.
Oh, and I want to say, oh, well.